After nearly a year of enjoying my 1992 Acura NSX, I decided to address one of the biggest complaints about these cars by making some improvements. So, what's the number one gripe with the NSX? It's slow. Well, no, I didn't do anything about that, and I'm not going to. It's perfect as is. I can run it through the gears at speeds that won't have me spending the night behind bars, since clearly I wouldn't do well in prison. Anyway, so what's the second biggest gripe about the NSX? Well, people say that it's boring, kind of generic looking, and lacks that exotic spice of other supercars of the time. And I get it, Ferrari and Lamborghini owners are just looking for a reason to justify the ridiculous running cost of their fragile machines that are either prone to spontaneously combusting or were born from tractors. For the NSX to be so reliable and livable as a daily driver, with examples regularly seen with over 200,000 miles on the odometer, they have to be boring, lesser cars. Of course, all exotics are judged on how bonkers the styling is. Take recent history with the McLaren 12C, for example. The design was panned as conservative, even considered ugly by some, and it really didn't matter how well it performed. It was ultimately judged on how it looked. Couple that blah styling with its terrible reliability and parts prices, and these things have depreciated terribly. It won't be long before you can buy a 12C that was close to $250,000 new for under $100,000. Thankfully, the NSX is known for being perfectly reliable. And while nobody would ever dare call this thing ugly, in the supercar scene at the time, it was certainly the most generic looking of the bunch. But supercars aren't supposed to have perfect 360-degree visibility from the interior either. The Japanese were doing a great job during this time of reinventing cars we loved, taking away a bit of that soul, yes, with more conservative styling, but also making them a lot more practical and reliable. In the late 80s and 90s, you had the Mercedes S-Class recreated with the Lexus LS400, along with the Miata and later the Honda S2000, giving their take on fun little British sports cars. Then you have the NSX. I don't dare mention Ferrari F40 in the same sentence, but Really though, this isn't just a vague copycat of a smattering of European supercars. The NSX had plenty of its own innovation to make it unique. This was the first mass-produced car to feature an all-aluminum body, not fiberglass or plastic like many other Euro exotics. The generic V6 that was also in the Acura Legend, yes, was actually heavily modified internally for the NSX. Inside that aluminum block were titanium connecting rods and other beefed-up internals, making the 8,000 RPM redline possible. And the legendary VTEC variable valve timing, which was quite an achievement at the time. And yes, this all comes in a sort of generic looking package, but one thing the NSX has over all the others is a thriving and pretty affordable aftermarket parts network. This makes the NSX a blank canvas for someone wanting to create something truly beautiful. Now, I've recently made some changes to my NSX in addition to the ones I made initially when I sorted out this car. A few days ago, I was at my mechanic, the Car Wizard shop, as all the fun new bits I ordered had arrived.
Well, Christmas has come early for the NSX. I have 3 things to unbox here. And YouTube, you're supposed to just unbox things on camera, so I guess I'll do that. Starting with this, which looks like a really neat little case. Coming all the way from Sweden. It's a conversion kit for my instrument cluster to an early S2000 cluster. Looks like a big wang. This little knife's gonna put me in the hospital. Alright, I'm already tired of unboxing things. There's an exhaust in here. Just take my word for it. It's used actually an HKS exhaust. I set to work installing all of my fancy new parts to the NSX, which means, like usual, I lasted for about 5 minutes before I'm screaming for the Car Wizard's help. Swapping the spoiler was easy enough, a bolt-on affair and some simple wiring for the third brake light, which didn't work before, and that didn't change with the new spoiler. While I finished everything up with the rear, the Car Wizard removed my old instrument cluster. Wizard, you're not listening to your dentist.
I know, I'm so too used to using this thing.
The new S2000 cluster had been programmed with the same mileage as my NSX, and both housings required a bit of shaving and modification to fit together before going back in the car. Since the Wizard was hard at work with the Dremel tool on the plastic housing, I set out to remove the stock rear muffler myself. With some help lowering it, I was actually able to do most of the work myself,
But, of course, I broke one bolt, which the wizard had to drill out and grind away. The car wizard wisely used a transmission jack to get the new exhaust up and tasked me with tightening up all the bolts while he made the final touches on the cool new instrument cluster.
Updates are complete with this Honda S2000 style cluster. I went with the earlier, I gotta get in front of this Chevy. There we go. I went with the earlier style S2000 cluster as it more closely resembles the Formula One tachometer Senna had in his championship Honda powered race car, which gave birth to the development of the NSX. No longer do I have to look at those boring gauges that looked identical to a 1992 Acura Integra, and the modern gauge with this carbon fiber housing fits perfectly with my admittedly overindulgent interior. Then there's the exhaust. From the cabin with the windows up, the exhaust note doesn't sound all that different, but with the windows down and driving through a tunnel, I finally have that exotic yet unique sound coming out of the rear end of this thing. No, it's not Ferrari levels of cool, but it still gives you that fizzy feeling. For the exterior, I really wanted to stick with stock-looking, correct parts for the era, and not go totally nuts with aftermarket body kits. Earlier this year, I ditched the boring-looking first-generation wheels for some better-looking 1995-style wheels, and had them refinished in gray metallic. From the factory, the NSX roof was black to give it an aircraft cockpit-style look with all the glass, but it was very popular at the time to paint it body color, which is what happened to mine. The big wang I installed is made to look just like the one from the higher performance NSXR and fits in well with my carbon fiber gone wild interior. In addition to making the NSX look more exotic, it also makes my car a little less practical like the Euro exotics, as I now have a big wang blocking my rear previously perfect visibility. Job done. So really, the NSX is only as boring as you make it. It's the only older exotic that can have both a purist following, hoarding their pristine, low-mileage examples as investments, but also be a reasonably affordable car for the tuner crowd to build into their own one-of-a-kind creation. Over the years, I've met a lot of frustrated Ferrari and Lamborghini owners, but I've never met an NSX owner that was bored with their car. I may tiptoe into the Italian garden one day for some spicy meatballs, but I doubt the ownership experience will be nearly as rewarding as the exotic rice cooker I have right here. But I doubt the performance experience will even be remotely as rewarding. Ow! Good, just hit my head. Hate it when I do that. Oh.